Good evening and welcome to this edition of the DeFacto Review, bringing you a weekly discussion of the news that are shaping Mongolia. With me in the studio is Mr. Jargal Sachen. My name is Aruna.
Good evening.
We are live on Facebook at V Television. Please also join us on Twitter, #Jargal_DeFacto. Coming up on the program, the Mongolian economy is turning the corner. However, adherence to fiscal discipline is key to lasting progress, reports World Bank. What lessons can Mongolians learn from the Asian Fixed Income Summit 2018 held in Ulaanbaatar last week? Parliament resolution authorizes 30% share of Tavantolgoi mining company to be sold on international capital market. How realistic is this? The Mongolian economy is predicted to develop on average by 6% in the year 2019 and 20. In 2016, the Mongolian economy rose by 1.2%. In the following year, it rose by 5.1%. And the first quarter of this year showed a growth of 6.1% in the economy. This swift revival of the Mongolian GDP indicates positive prospects in the short to medium term. World Bank report suggests that total recovery involves tackling, quote, the core structural vulnerabilities. Could you please elaborate on this statement?
This structural vulnerability. In normal language, it shows that this report shows also about the efficiency of public investment in Mongolia. The growth we are talking about were again caused by high commodity prices for minerals like copper and coal. And still this commodity price up, the more demand in China helps GDP to grow, and also the conditions we have made with the International Monetary Fund is also helpful for decreasing budget deficit in the country, because basically restructuring very expensive foreign loans with different terms loan, altogether it makes our budget deficit went down, and altogether also the increase of the economy made the balance payment better, with now with more certain profit, which helped to keep Mongolian devaluation process stopped. Mm-hmm. That's the major things which caused the economic growth of 6%, as you said, and 6% this year, next, and in the year after. But however, again, this vulnerability shows that still Mongolia, you depend on the commodities, prices.
As an economist, what is your opinion on this forecast?
I do agree with their forecast, where they said that in spite of all these changes, positive things, Mongolia should pay more attention to have more efficiency from their public investment. And on one side. On the other side, still this whole growth of economy is not because the productivity growth. It is just because the extension of investment, the growth is coming. So we should, to solve the problem, Mongolia should diversify the economy. And for that, all Mongolian government and all donor countries or the countries that assist in Mongolia should think on that and make out very clear strategy where we diversify. Because we talk a lot about diversification, but the result still is little. And we talk about, for example, about IT, the education system is to be changed, incentives to be changed. So the report mostly bringing our attention to that efficiency. Another one is to think about a centralized one administration unit of all public investment to make clear the merit of each project. Unlike many projects spent since 2013, spending a lot of public money for many small projects that the result is not very clear, and it was too decentralized, and there was no clear feasibility study for these projects, which unfortunately it's very sad to hear, but the World Bank report shows the reality of our public management quality.
Indeed, experts are saying that Mongolian government's commitment to fiscal discipline is going to play a pivotal role in the revival of the economy.
Yes, it is. Like they also, the report said that why discipline is needed, because in 2010, Mongolia paid unexpectedly earlier the money we have asked from IMF, and they took itself out of the conditions that was coming with that. I think it was about 200 something million US dollar, and we had the same situation in the crisis year of 2008, and we had also a big problem with deficit, budget deficit, and we asked money from IMF, but within 2 years, as economy grows up with the same reason, commodity price up, everything, the government was feeling like we will have this paradise forever, and they paid the money. But this risk is still here, but relatively with very less probability that Mongolia will take or pay unexpected earlier this money. About $500 million loan is coming from IMF, but another $4.5 or so billion dollars are coming from World Bank, ADB, Japan, Korea, and other institutions, which is coming because with the same conditions of IMF. So probably this time they will not pay back earlier. But however, budget discipline is very important in this country during the time of economic coming up.
Well, what other solutions do you see as for paying off the public debt in full recovery?
The point is the budget should be disciplined, as you said, meaning that our expenses should be comparable with our revenue. And once I remember they made a budget law that by first day of 2013, our budget deficit should be less than 2% of GDP, which the next parliament completely ignored, changed it. At certain times it came to 17% deficit, so that we're using more money, way more money than we are earning. So that bad habit is to be ended, first. Second, as a way go out, we should really pay more attention again to have very clear selection of public investment, very thorough check of each planned public investment, and we should also have a central one information center of public investment. For example, we can take the cement market. The cement market, the people didn't know where and who is doing that. Today we have a 4 million ton a year production capacity in Mongolia, made by 3-4 companies at the same time. Yet we are using only 30% of our capacity. Why? Because again, the not proper planning, all large projects somehow stopped. And those companies who were ready they have borrowed a lot of money, and they were producing, and suddenly now their demand came down 4 times less than they expected. So as a result, now we have a overcapacity, and they need to competition. They compete with the price. Price went down to the certain level. Now the factories are working almost with the loss. Nothing to say about the need to pay their foreign debt. So we need planning.
Okay. Let us discuss the next topic of the evening regarding housing and financing policies. Last week, the Asian Fixed Income Summit took place in Ulaanbaatar, and discussions focused on solutions for housing finances. Could you please tell us more about the impact of this summit on the Mongolian housing economy?
You see, the fixed income is mostly mortgage, because mortgage is every month, every year you receive for 20, 30 years certain fixed incomes. And it's a matter of managing that income in the right way. And how does it manage in that way is, on one side, the mortgage companies buy the loan that are given for housing from commercial banks. And they are repacking that portfolio and selling as housing mortgage-based, mortgage guaranteed bond. And they sell that bond to the market, receive the money, and pay back to the banks. That this is how it works. Secondary market, on the secondary market that shares their bonds. In Mongolia, these Asian countries, 8 of them coming to this event, have shared their experiences. Of course, every country has different schemes for housing projects, mortgages. But Mongolians went, to me, a little bit in a strange way, on not very smart way, because what we have created 2013 was just to give money to people who wants to buy a house. 30% you pay down pay, and you have 8% for 20, 30 years, right? And this money was given from Mongol Bank at the 3% to commercial banks. Commercial banks added their own 5%, and with 8% the customer is receiving money. And when on one side, on the other side, the money, this 3% money that cost, Mongol Bank, as it is not its function to make housing project or give you a loan, so they had to eventually to transfer this balance to government balance. Then what happened? See, government cannot go with 3% all the time because government here borrowing at 17%. At the market rate, in Mongolia, saving rate is 16, 17%, and Mongolian government was at times borrowing from them only from the market at 17%. So you borrow money at 17%, you give at 3%. The difference creates budget deficit. Budget deficit is paid by everybody. So logically, in Mongolia, in Mongolian mortgage since 2013 we got about 100,000 families got housing, apartments. But the problem is everybody is pooling money and to give the housing to a few. So it is not market mechanism. Now, why they did it? Because it was a lobby of construction companies, banks who have borrowed them. They had so big lobby that the government had to issue money, and the people were buying houses at a very high price. If we had not this scheme, the housing price would go down, and some of them would be bankrupt, construction companies. Some banks should also be bankrupt. Then now the price will be normal, so that with normal rate people can buy houses cheaper. So that Mongolian scheme of mortgage system didn't work. But however, they want to continue that. Why? Because once 100,000 people are paying mortgage back, they are creating certain money to the pool. And only the money who came from the pool to the pool, they can borrow them to other people, extending. Still, at the 3%, the remaining the taxpayers pay. So that's why, paradox is we have 40,000 apartments in Mongolia staying for owners, empty, stay every night empty, it's ready to use. Then we have, just in Ulaanbaatar, 100-something thousand families looking for apartments. So this government program created distortion of prices. As a result, we have this sort of supply, this sort of demand, and they never meet. So I hope this summit, the 8 countries' experiences, at least with Korean Mortgage Corporation, Mongolia had signed a memorandum of understanding, and hopefully Mongolians will learn more.
Last week, the Mongol Bank set the personal consumption ratio of debt to income at 70%. This directive will take effect in 2019. What do you think? Is this a good approach to regulating the credit market?
At least it's regulating the way how Mongolians consume loan at for the personal use. For example, such a loan like a pension loan, a retired person, otherwise now borrowing money from the bank at the level of, say, 90% of his income or her income. It means per month you pay certain principal, certain loans, right? You pay for loan certain amount of money, and you have income, usually for pension, it's pension money. And if you compare it, it should be not 90%, it should be 70%. And by fixing that ratio, Mongol Bank is convincing people to use rationally their money, because you cannot, I mean, you borrow money, you use it before you receive money, and later on you have no money for normal living conditions. If 90% your income goes for paying a loan, with 10% you cannot live. That may bring certain family households to more poverty. So they did not receive a loan to be poor. They actually want to be rich. One. Secondly, it is personal, as you said, personal consuming debt, right? But now, if it is business, there is no such restrictions. So people would rather go and take money for some certain business or something. They would rather go create company, and through the company, if they borrow money, they don't have that limit. So that's why Mongol Bank suggested. Plus, now Mongolian average salary is 998,000, almost 1 million tugriks, which is about $400 US. And according to this, 70% of 400 is $280 is maximum for the average salary person to have a loan for personal use per month. So to pay the loan to the income. I think it's more rational regulations to make sure that people, and banks in particular, don't lending completely. On that matter, I would like also illustrate that, for example, in the case of some car companies are selling new car, brand new Toyota, 20 years, and you have 10 years, and you have 8% a year, and you don't need down payment. That means people are so desperate to buy to be a new car's owners. But Mongolians pay too much attention to the form, not the content. So that's why they even before Natam, they are buying so many other new cars now, just to show off. This means whatever you consume, it should be comparable with your income, like the government itself. The budget spending should be comparable to your revenue. So that means under this new regulations, those companies cannot sell like this or lease new car under these conditions from the January 1st next year. And I just, again, checked it with Mongol Bank, and I understood, they told me that it has to do with every lending. The lending should not be, otherwise, if it is more than 70% debt to income ratio, it will be regarded kind of exploitations. So that's why.
Let's move to our last topic of the evening. It's about Tavantolgoi projects. Last week, the government presented a proposal to the parliament to accelerate the development of the Tavantolgoi coal mine. Minister of Mining and Heavy Industry, Mr. Somyavadzir, stated that Mongolia is finally going to be able to raise capital on international markets. Many decisions were made and discussions held on this matter before. What distinguishes this decision from previous ones this time?
Well, 6 times since 2010 there was such an approach, proposals. But Parliament was not accepting it. Now finally at the 7th time they accept it. Also because now it's one party has 85% of seats. That's one of the reasons. Second reason, you cannot wait anymore with this mine. We have been talking all these last 10-20 years about the mine alone, and the way we are exploiting this mine is very bad. We have a terrible situation of, say, conditions of work for the drivers, and the income, and many companies run with a loss. So this time the Parliament made special resolution permitting or allowing the government to come with the proposals to go ahead with towards IPO, and they give a visa for 30% of the total shares to be offered on IPO in international capital market, which is already good decisions, but it's easier said than done, because you see, to make this sort of a big IPO, you need time. The minister said we have half in a year, 180 days, and at the end of the year they should complete. They will remake feasibility study, and they will all preparations. They have a management team ready, etc. Out of all this, I think the most difficult thing is the management.
The what other steps do we need to take in order to prepare for this IPO release? This
new feasibility study, because things are changing on the one side, because they're too long we are talking about. Now the estimation is 20% of this share is owned by Mongolian citizens. Again, it was populistic decisions by two parties when they were together in coalitions. Now every Mongolians that time were alive. Some of them passed away. Now 2.5 or so million people owns 1,072 shares of the project, of the mine, and which is at estimate value of 1993 tugriks per share, which altogether makes somehow in dollar, I was estimating that in dollar it all together makes Mongolian citizens own about, everybody has about 1 million tugrik worth share, 2.5 million altogether. Now the people own about $1 billion value. Okay, if 20% is 1 billion, total value is to be estimated based on this estimation about $5 billion US. And if 3% of them is 1.6 billion US dollar can be raised. But it is, if it is on time, everything good, then it could be two or three, four even times more money we can raise. So what shall the project will do with the money raised? First, they will make, according to these resolutions of the Parliament, they will make power stations. 450 megawatt power stations at Tavantolgoi, not at Oyu-Tolgoi, which makes the government resolution makes Oyu-Tolgoi to make one decisions now to help or to create together that power stations at all at $1 billion cost. The other one is the railway down 270 kilometers from TT through OT to the border, which is already half done. And also, interestingly, this resolution says that we also to make 470 kilometers railway road from TT to Zumbayan, all the way to the current existing railway corridor. But you cannot do the two railways at the same time, so probably for cost efficiency, they need to complete the shorter one and to start making money. But all this together can we make sure that this whole investment is a return? That's one issue. So now in front of the government now many choices. But one thing, everything will depend on the first feasibility study they will make.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, how about the local economy? What is the impact going to be of Tavantolgoi project development on local citizens?
Obviously, Tavantolgoi, Oyutolgoi have enormous impact already on the way people live in this South Gobi Aymak, and also neighbor Aymaks. Now more people are coming, more attracting. These two large projects will create a lot of jobs. Estimated some 31,000 jobs will be created if during just two large infrastructure projects. Then this coal will be processed. There will be, it is in simple language, there will be washing coal, extracting ash, sulfuric, other things, and the pure enriched coal, high quality coal will go with higher prices to the southern neighbor. It's undoubtedly a big impact on not only the South Gobi people, but on all of Mongolian community. But before that, the most difficult question is management. Management, which is usually very bad because every time when the government is changing, they change. And the Tavantolgoi board, Tavantolgoi executive team, which will be changed again when the government will be changed, which is happening every estimated 1.5 year in Mongolia. One. So the international market will not buy shares of the company where the management are changed all the time. This is one thing. The other thing is, timing-wise, people have now more choice. I mean, investors in Hong Kong, all around the world have more choice. In America, for example, they are increasing treasury interest, which is regarded the riskless investment, now up to 3%, from 1% to 3%. And many money goes to America back from Asia, from all the world. One. Secondly, in Hong Kong, there are other interesting investment securities you can buy, like fintech, biotech, which will make more money on that. So we Mongolians find the right time to have, right time to offer that IPO on the markets, and we should have stable government and stable management and talented people who will work according to international capital markets demand, not Mongolian standard. So these are the issues we need to address before we go with IPO for TET.
Certainly. Thank you. Well, I think
that's the end now.
That's the end. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good evening.
Good night. Thank you.